Um, so basically, I've got quite a broad experience through from water, wastewater, energy, efficiency, through to waste now as well. And I'd like to talk to you today about, oh, I haven't got a stick thing. I'd like to talk to you today about innovation in precinct scale food and organic waste management, opportunities for the future. Is it just, which one? Top one? There. So I'm going to do a little, just a little bit of a set the scene in terms of urban growth. And then I'm going to talk about two main projects. The Piedmont Ultimo Precinct scoping study, so it's a high-level analysis, and the Central Park feasibility study, which is a deeper analysis but isn't complete yet. So I'm only going to give you sort of some preliminary numbers there. Just in terms of, we've heard this a couple of times in this morning especially, we have a challenge. There is a real challenge at the moment, urban growth and densification. I live in Sydney at the moment. I've lived there for a long time, actually 17 years. And Sydney's population now is 5 million. It's going to go to 8 million within, by the middle of the century. And Melbourne's got a similar story. Brisbane's got a huge growth as well. It's just happening across Australia. And we're going to be reaching around 40 million by the middle of the century, which is huge. We're almost doubling our numbers. It's huge. And this is what we're building. It's all going to be in the multi-unit dwellings, and they're all going to be pretty high rise as well. So there's a huge challenge in terms of my wastewater world, in terms of those utilities, but also here in terms of our waste world, in terms of having to deal with those multi-unit dwellings and the stories that we've got at the moment, where there's challenges of 12 deep in terms of the bins and things that people are having to collect, that the waste managers are having to collect. So we need to do something different, and there's a real opportunity there in the multi-unit dwellings at the moment. So I'm just going to go through these couple of case studies, and the first one is the Piedmont Ultimo Precinct, which we call the PUP for short, study. Organic study, and it's to investigate the opportunities for innovative organics waste management in the Piedmont Ultimo Precinct PUP, relevant to that area, but also more broadly, so that we can think about things now and in the future, so existing and future multi-unit dwellings. It was funded by the Sydney Water Corporation and New South Wales EPA. The investigations focus mainly on organics waste data collection and mapping. This was a scoping study, just to sort of say what kind of levels of data can we sort of pull together here for organics layers, and scan local and international innovation in organics management, and to develop some illustrative options for that particular area, to sort of say what could we do in that area. Characteristics of the site is the densest area in Australia, at 14,000 people per kilometre. That will probably change very rapidly, very soon, but it's the densest at the moment. The current population, about 28,000, it's going to grow to 35,000 by 2036. And it's really diverse area in terms of high and low density housing, commercial, institutional, and major tourist sites. So UTS, quite handy. This is why we chose the site, because UTS, apart from its densest urban area in Australia, UTS is right there. 43,000 students in that area, also all the staff to support them. 30,000 students with the staff to support them. Central Park, the beautiful green building in the centre there, which is the other case study we'll give. And all the student units there, the number of flats, 5,300 residents that are just going to finish going into place by the end of this year. Central Park will be completed, and all the workers, etc. there. Things like the Powerhouse Museum in that area. Actually, where's the little light thing? Which one do you press for the... There's meant to be a sort of button that you press the... Oh. Is there a sort of a laser? A laser thing? No. Not this one? I saw the snazzy one, which sort of like the shaded area. I like that. Okay, I haven't got one, so I've got nothing. Oh, that's going to be interesting for later slides. Never mind. So anyway, so the fish market, so what I'm saying, so the Powerhouse Museum, so there's 500,000 visitors. Fish market's huge site with 3 million visitors per year and 13,500 tons of fish per annum, and all the waste associated with that. So there's a huge amount of organics that are recycled from there. A lot of it goes for food for chickens at the moment. The Star, which has 11 million visitors per year. So all these huge sites in that area, and there's plenty more. Oh, now I've stuffed it. No, it won't work. I'm not doing very well, sorry. Just use this one. That one? Yeah. Also, I'm having technical difficulties, sorry. So what did we do? So in terms of data collection, what we were trying to do was bring Sydney Water and the New South Wales EPA in terms of sort of different data sets together and other data sets we had, and bring it together to sort of say, what are the multiple layers of organics in a dense urban area, and what can you see there in terms of the sort of hotspot mapping that you might want to be able to do. So we collected data from various sources. Again, this was a scoping study, so it was like a first cut. Where can you get this data from? What's the quality? What can you do with it? And so the data we were collecting, we were trying to look at the residential food waste and the non-residential food waste and commercial food waste. Fats, oils and greases from grease traps, that was from Sydney Water, that kind of information. Trade waste going to sewer and sewage. So you're sort of going deeper. Not only are you looking at the sort of higher level sort of stuff that the councils often look at in terms of the food waste and the commercial sort of waste at that level, but it's actually going underground and saying, what other organics are underneath there? What can we do with it? And what's the hotspot mapping that you might see? So that's the, oh, that was a blur. That was the aim of the data collection, was to sort of see that hotspot mapping. And what we found was that in the sort of residential sector, when you sort of do the hotspot mapping, you sort of see there was about 3,000 tonnes per annum spread across. You could see, of course, if you've got high-rise developments, you're going to get a lot more food waste there as opposed to the single residential. So you can see that sort of mapping if you do it. We also had the commercial food waste. We were able to gather information from bin trim and look at that. Of course, that's only a partial picture, but we gathered that information, and we had nearly 1,000 tonnes per annum. The grease traps is about 120 grease traps in that area, which so there's about 200 tonnes per annum there. And the volatile solids from the sewage from over 10,000 properties units was going on towards 8,000 tonnes per annum. And again, certain places we couldn't get data, so the STAR was a bit difficult. That's the huge 11 million visitors per year. We couldn't get that data, but it was just starting to pull that information together. And you can see the sort of the maps there in terms of the different areas that we were looking at, the different levels. The next point, the next part of the study was to look at some examples. So if we were to do something different in the PUP area, the Piedmont Ultimo area, what could we do? So we said, well, let's have a look internationally and pull this kind of information together. The report, by the way, is public, so that this kind of information is all there so that you can go and click on it and find it from the report. And what we did was to collect a series of little sort of vignettes that sort of told a story about a certain type of technology or socio-technical solution. And so we looked at residential, commercial, and institutional. And we had about 34 little vignettes, which had, maybe 3 or 4 different examples within each as well. So you have over sort of 100 examples of other places doing, innovative, interesting things from small scale to large scale in terms of organics management. And this example here, you probably read it by now, is eTurd, which I think is really exciting. So this is they're doing it in the States, they've done it in the UK. I think we've had a go here, but I still can't talk to the person who's actually done it. But it's actually just making little anaerobic digesters and feeding it with dog poo in parks, which I think is a fantastic idea. So I think we should do more of this. Some of the other examples were on the small household scale, looking at the caddies and being able to collect it for your small compost or on in your back garden. There's now little dehydrators you can get in the house. There's anaerobic digesters, which I point out the green one over there. So that's the top left-hand corner. The little anaerobic digester up there isn't so small; it's quite big. But a family of 5, if they have enough, typical waste, food waste, they'd be able to give themselves 3 hours of gas per day for cooking. So on the right-hand side, of course, the amazing Love Food Hate Waste, which is now spreading across the globe, which originated, as far as I know, from the UK, and is now in New Zealand, as we saw yesterday, which was a great presentation. Green Redeem, things like that, which is another UK example, which is sort of you pledge to reduce your waste. And you get sort of points, like flying points for being able to do things, and you get coffee and sort of free tickets to certain cinemas and things like that for taking part. Also down on the bottom left-hand corner there, things like Fogo. We've heard a lot about Fogo this week. And the brown bin there, which is the Italian example, Milan, where they have 85% recovery from their multi-unit dwellings and commercial properties from that food-only sort of service. And then over here, we've got the little bin here, which is the pay-as-you-trash, which is from Korea, which they've been doing for a while. Again, we heard about that yesterday. And this far corner here, which is more about a vacuum system, which is a dry vacuum system which takes different streams, including food waste, and that's in Hammarby in Europe. Other examples, apps, the top left-hand corner there, there's being able to, places like Adelaide started this a long time ago where they had apps where you could, you had too many lemons or oranges from your trees, and you would be able to sort of say, I've got some spare materials here, and then now you've got cafes saying, we've got spare food by the end of the day, and if you want to come and get it, you can get it for a reduced price. The fridge there in the middle, that's Frome in the southwest of England where I come from, and that's where they originated the fridge idea, which is a community fridge where you bring your materials and you can take it away. So we saw yesterday a presentation again that New Zealand, so they're doing it there as well, and other places like Spain are doing it. And then places like the Oz Harvest, which a lot of you will have already heard about as well in terms of overdate materials or spare materials that can go to Oz Market, those sorts of things. Top there, things like bringing your compost, your food waste to the markets where they can do, certain places do worm farming, or they do communal worm farming or composting. And then the top ones here, also the bicycles. This is done in Chicago and across the US, quite a few places, where you have a sort of bin, you sort of opt into a caddy system where they take your food waste away for you with a bicycle, and then they take it to a worm farm or a composting area around that area. And then the plant, I don't know if any of you have heard about the plant, but that's in Chicago as well. Quite a lot of innovative stuff going on there. And that's where there's this amazing symbiotic relationship between growing a fish. There's like a fish farm there, and there's also a bakery, and there's also a beer brewery there. And so it's this symbiotic relationship between all these things in an old site that was sort of virtually derelict a few years ago. So some really interesting things. Also, top left-hand corner, that's in the UK, that's a shopping mall which has about 50 retailers there, food retailers, and they vacuum their food waste through the system because it's just so big. And they've got a centrifugal dehydrator that they use. In the middle there, that's De Graves, so that's in Melbourne, where they've got a number of food outlets there, cafes, and they have a sort of a dehydrator sort of system there as well. And then next to that is an anaerobic digestion system, which was at Federation Square for 3 years. So that's a big site again in Melbourne. And the top one there is us at UTS. We've got a kind of dehydrator as well. And then at one of the other universities, it's using Pulp Master, which is where they put their food waste into a pulping machine, and then that's taken away and goes to places like for processing. Bottom left-hand corner, that's a block of flats in Calgary in Canada, and that's where they've got some incinerators. So there's examples of incinerators, and that's where you're starting to see food waste going into the sewage system. So you're starting to see this convergence of the waste with the waste system with the wastewater system. And then these two ones in the middle here are, again, there's a commercial versions of effectively incinerators where sometimes it's pre-treated a little bit, like the waste-to-water system. Otherwise, it goes into the sewage system. And then you've also got this one on the far corner here is the Cronulla site where Pulp Master is taking food waste to the Cronulla site, wastewater treatment plant, where they're generating energy. I think that's all the examples. That was a bit fast, sorry. Right. Oh dear, right, okay. I had to squeeze two presentations into one. I'm not doing very well. So this is the example of the sort of illustrative options, and you can see all of those kinds of ideas specifically for that one area, and saying the main message with this one is that we took this to a group of about 30 stakeholders, including Sydney Water, New South Wales EPA, SS Rock, people who were the technology providers, and it was a socio-technical sort of combination of systems there, different scales, and it was really exciting sort of discussion, sort of saying, well, yes, you can do different things, and that, yes, people do things in other areas. So it's really, it gave everyone quite an optimistic view. Something that came out really strongly was anaerobic digestion on site and vacuuming that system as well. So sort of saying, there's something there, that with all this growth, maybe we can do something different. So that's why we went to the next project, which I'm going to have to do in 4 minutes. No question. So this one here is Central Park feasibility study. This is a preliminary version at the moment. So this is just preliminary figures. And what we were trying to do was to investigate feasibility of using vacuum and anaerobic digestion technology to transport and process food waste and other organics at Central Park. So things like green waste, residential and commercial food waste, used cooking oil, fats, oils and grease, sewage, sludge from the water recycling plant, and to produce biogas on site, and to create the nutrient-rich digestate for beneficial reuse. Central Park, we focused mainly on, we focused on one Central Park itself, which is part of a much bigger development. The organics, volumes and management, technical options, and reuse options, and the costing and alternative management options. That Central Park, it's $2 billion development on the old Carlton United Brewery. It's located right next to Central Station, if you haven't been there. It's a beautiful building with green walls, which is why it's got 1,200 square meters of green walls of 35,000 plants. Lots of floor area, lots of people living there, and there's mainly this 1 megaliter per day water recycling plant at the bottom of the building, which is managed by Flow, which is why I should go back and I should say that this was funded by the City of Sydney. Sorry about that. Through one of their innovation grants, and Flow Systems, who manage that water recycling plant, and it was done in collaboration with AVAC and Active Research, they're specialists in AD and vacuum, and also JLL, who's the manager of the site for retail. So in terms of Central Park, some of the preliminary findings. With this wastewater recycling plant on site, it overwhelms what the other organics are on site because of the trade waste. So the trade waste discharged after the water recycling is huge. If you zoom down and you have a look at the this one down here, then you can see the other streams of waste in terms of food waste from the residential, food waste from the commercial, food waste from Woolworths we kept separate because it's quite a big supermarket at the bottom of the building, used cooking oil, and also fats, oils and grease, and the green waste, which is very specific for that particular site because of the green walls. And so you can see the proportions there. One thing that we were quite interested in was the fact that there'd been a bin trim assessment of the retail food waste in that site. And what we wanted to do was test that and check. So we actually got JLL and Cleanaway to do a trial. So since the middle of December last year, they've been running a trial and they've been measuring all the food waste coming from the kitchens in the retail space. So there's 50 retailers, about 25 are food related, and this is the kind of variation we've had. So we're getting about 112 kilograms per day from food waste from the retail participants, and there's about 21 out of the 25 have participated, so we've got quite good uptake on that, and it's pretty clean. And the thing that we found was that it was quite different. You can see the left-hand corner, the measured versus the bin trim assessment, very different. And there's a number of reasons why that might be, but it could be the bin trim assessment by looking at the bins is a bit off. It's also that we weren't including in the measurement the food scrapings, and so there's a few things that might be there's a gap there. But basically, the measured is very different from the bin trim, so you've got to be a bit careful about that. And the other one there is the Woolworths. You can see how big the Woolworths food waste is. And they give to Oz Harvest as well, so that's what's left after that. Lots of different people involved in all this waste, and this picture just gives you an indication of the distance that they travel in terms of going from Central Park to the used cooking oil, the red bins going here, the green waste is going to Earth Power, and the fats, oils and greases, etc. So this is all being processed and treated at different places. So it's very interesting that that's happening. Very quickly, sorry, being greedy. We've looked at a bunch of different options, and we're in the process of doing that now. From what's really useful for Central Park and what's really useful sort of for other multi-unit dwellings that you might be able to look at in the future. And what we've done, the main thing is that we've looked at the organics that's produced versus the biogas that could be produced. And so what you can see is here, you can see the trade waste from the sludge is very high organics, but not much biogas, whereas some of the others, like the food waste, a lot of biogas, but not a lot of food waste. So you can see here, this bottom corner here, you can see how much hot water or electricity it can substitute in terms of the flats at one Central Park. And this is really just to sort of say, that's the end of that study, and we'll be finishing that off in the next month or so. But it's really talking about that the main things are that there's a real opportunity for multi-unit dwellings at the moment because we've got so many coming online. And it's not one size fits all in terms of options, solutions. You don't want everything, but you want to sort of say, what does this site really, what helps, or what's the solution for this site? And there's socio-technical solutions at multiple sort of scales. And we need to act now.